Sexton trying to get loose. He'll fire. Hey! Knocks it down. Carl slammed it home. Garland upstairs. Oh! Sexton inside. A thunderous dunk.
And Allen blocked the shot at the rim.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. And connecting with me now, live via Zoom, is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Justin, we're coming off a win, but somehow it's worse. Evan Mobley turned his ankle. He's out Wednesday against the Mavs, and the injury bug does not stop biting these Cavaliers. But overall, I'm doing great.
I'm doing pretty well, too. And unlike the Cleveland Cavaliers, we brought some reinforcements today. We got some help because we you know, shouldering the load, you got to bring in some friends that can help bring it to the fans. And today, joining us are the two hosts of the It's Cavalier podcast. First, Mack Berry. Mack, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great despite the recent game. It's always give and take, isn't it?
It really is. But at the end of the day, Cavs secured a winning record for the season.
Yes,
that is a win in my books. Also joining us today is Corey Walsh. Corey Walsh of the It's Cavalier podcast. Corey, how you doing? Outside of me flubbing your last name.
No, it's cool. You know, I never have had that happen with a name like Walsh before, but
yeah, it's about as easy as it gets.
Sorry, Justin, but hopefully I can be like the Dylan Windler of this episode and just be the surprise feature.
There you go.
Nice shout out indeed. I've got a gift. I can flub any word in the English language, and I couldn't help but do it that time. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into this mailbag episode. Really excited, and big thanks to everyone that submitted their questions. X-rays were negative on Evan Mobley, but he and Jared Allen will both be out against the Dallas Mavericks. And the other big news of the day is Cleveland Cliffs Incorporated will be replacing Goodyear as the Cavs jersey sponsor for next season. I was very pleased to see in the promo video that they'll be matching the colors.
The color matching is so important because if you don't match, it looks so aggressively corporate. Like, I really don't mind. I didn't mind the Goodyear logo. I know that this is like a super hot topic for people, but like, I feel like as long as you color match or like have what the Magic have in Disney, which is just like literally the perfect partner and almost basically seems like the team is like owned by Disney. Like I feel like it's the best way to go about it.
I couldn't agree more. And for me, especially being a CFL fan, I'm just so used to ads on jerseys that it just kind of glazes over. But I really like when it's a connection to the community where it's Cleveland Cliffs instead of just Bumble or something along those lines. But now with that out of the way, I think this would be a fun spot to start this mailbag podcast off with. Magic Employee X asks, I love the Twitter names, if the last month has forced us to develop some coping mechanisms. His personal coping mechanism is ordering wings when games get tight. Corey, what is your coping mechanism if you have developed one over the last month?
I just try to look at the personal growth that this Cavs team has showed in individual ways, because it's hard to really evaluate this Cavs team as a solid unit when players are dropping like flies, then getting rehabilitated at random times. I mean, the theme of this season is definitely injuries. So if you can just look at like Darius Garland's growth as a player individually, I mean, yeah, he struggles sometimes when he doesn't have his main pick and roll partner out there, and we see it all the time. Mobley has to step up at times, and due to that absence, and then it's a constant revolving door. So if you can just constantly find like some positive outlet to look at these players' growth individually rather than the struggle they've had over the past month as a team, then I think you can still look at this compared to last year and think that this is still a really good sign for this team.
My coping mechanism is DMing you, Justin.
Yeah, don't let Corey fool you. He'll be texting me throughout the game. He gets frustrated.
You know what's so funny about that, Carter, is you saying that your coping mechanism is DMing me. My coping mechanism is often like not reading my mentions or not reading the timeline, because
not reading your doomy DMs from your co-host.
Too many people are reaching out to me for comfort, and I'm still trying to like process everything in real time.
I've actually been actively trying to not do that so much because I'm ruining his life.
That's why you're getting replaced, Carter.
Because it's like, yeah. I mean, I figured this was more of a passing of the torch podcast than anything. I've been fired.
I'm glad you read into it the right way.
In disguise.
Mac, what about you? Do you have any coping mechanisms as the Cavs continue to have both the greatest season ever and one of the most crushing seasons ever?
It's odd, man. It's very, flummoxing. Just because, the way this season began, nobody really knew what to expect. It was really a season that most attributed to development, and not many people pegged the Cavs to be in position to be anywhere near the playoffs. Even the most optimistic people out there, and I include myself among those bunch. But with that said, I mean, just watching these games recently, I have no choice but to view things through both like the micro and macro aspect of things. In the short term, the losses prior to last night's win, they were tough, very tough to stomach, because you have a sense to which, if the Cavs just played up to their capabilities, especially on the defensive end, these are winnable games. I think even on you guys' last episode, you referred to, holding Chicago to 98 points, and that was a small victory right there. But guess what? Cavs fans are tired of moral victories. They want to see some of these wins start to actually come through. And this has been a season, in total, and speaking to the macro of it all, I mean, it's starting to look like gravy, just because we're now in a position in which we will probably get to see the Cavs participate in postseason basketball of some type So those are my kind of takeaways. That and my daughter is usually watching the game with me, so I can't take it too serious. I don't know if you guys saw the video
How
I
old is your
posted on Twitter
daughter?
the other day. She actually just turned 2.
All right, so right about the same age. Millie could not care less.
You know what? It's funny because you mentioned this was thought to be a developmental season, and I think it still is. Like, even though the expectations shifted, that was the next step of the development, right? Is translating what they do well individually into actually playing winning basketball. And it's that kind of realization and just putting that in perspective has helped me deal with this. And it's very frustrating because I really felt that we could be seeing some interesting basketball come April in the playoffs. And I'm sure, like, we can't exactly write that off at this point. But as the injuries continue to pile up, not only over the last month, but just in last night's game.
It was brutal.
You could really feel the wind go out of their sails when Laurie went down. It was like, okay, like how much can we we react to at this point? How much can we overcome?
Explode when I saw Lamar getting ready to go down.
Oh, good Lord.
I was going to say, the minute that Lamar started grabbing his wrist, I was like, oh, this could be like just him trying to pull the call. Then like 2 seconds later, I'm like, oh, so this is like a thing? This is actually like reality? I had to snap myself out of it, I felt like. And then he got up and acted like the wrist was totally fine.
And I went into that game thinking, you know what, this is a night where I don't want the starters to play a lot of minutes. Like, let's play a deeper rotation. We're playing 5 games in 7 days. And as the game progressed, like, it was on the right track, then Mobley got hurt and the lead evaporated. At that point, I became fine with Garland playing 40 minutes because you just needed to get a win, because we do not have a lot of easy games at this point. Like, you're playing Dallas without your big men. You're playing Atlanta on a second night of a back-to-back. Then you're playing the Knicks at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And the Knicks have been playing well recently. They've won 4 in a row. They've beat some good teams over that stretch. So you needed to get that win no matter what, in my opinion. So I was fine with the shift in kind of mentality within that game.
Yeah, you don't get to manage minutes when you're not winning by 20. Like
a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah, you got to kind of play your guys and earn the W, especially. And it was funny. JB mentioned heading to that Raptors game last week that, hey, this is a playoff game for us, and I feel like he's kind of shifted to a playoff rotation and mentality. Moses had been completely cut from the rotation, as has Ed Davis. Cedi's been playing a lot tighter of a rotation as of late, and I think it's a byproduct of him saying, like, okay, this is basically our playoffs right now, to try to find our way back to 6 and maintain. So yeah, we're gonna tighten the rotation. We're only gonna play the guys we're actually gonna play in the playoffs. Like, if I know one of the questions we have in here, and I'm totally jumping on it. One of the questions was, what would our playoff rotation be? I think we're kind of seeing it, with the exception of, obviously Jared Allen in for probably like Lamar. But like, he's playing playoff basketball right now and how he's coaching, in my opinion.
Yeah, if I was JB, I would have pulled Carter for not playing the backup point guard role effectively, because I thought he was setting up a perfect segue to Keith Henson's question, which is, what's up with Cedi?
I was going to let you take it, you jerk.
Yeah, but you jumped to a whole different topic. So if you want to talk so much, Carter, what is your read on what's going on with Cedi Osman?
Well, I grumpy tweeted last night, Cedi Osman can't get minutes for this team right now, and I won't lie, it was because Caris was kind of struggling, and Dylan missed yet another 3, and whatever. I grump tweeted, but like, I think it's kind of clear, like, he hasn't been shooting well, and the rest of his intangibles are not there right now, especially short of a backup point guard to kind of take on the creation load and get him the ball in his spots where he likes to see it. And I think sometimes it's that simple. Like, he's not playing super well on the periphery. I don't think his attention to detail defensively has been where it is, nor was Caris's, by the way. I think that's actually very specifically why Dylan Windler closed the game. And it just feels like, to the playoff mentality side of things with JB, to kind of connect that, I think he's like, yeah, I don't have time for this anymore. I'm trying to win games, and I don't think you're helping enough. And I don't think it's as much about proving a point as saying, hey, I can't rely on you to consistently play winning basketball, and it is the winning time part of the season.
Yeah, like I had a theory coming into this basically that Cedi Osman's the only one in the rotation right now that I don't feel like has played hard recently. Like some of these guys are doing the wrong things. Like there are limitations to what Kevin Love and Lauri Markkanen can do defensively. Same with Darius Garland as well. But Cedi, beyond the defensive limitations, it feels like he's kind of played unfocused. He's been floating around out there, and with so much on the line, like I feel JB, what his kind of preference is guys at least play hard. Like there's no one's going to mistake Lauri Markkanen for being a lockdown defender, but you know that he's going to play hard within his role. And if he's going to have a failure on the defensive end of the court, it's not going to be due to lack of effort, right? And Caris LeVert, right now, he's not necessarily being effective, but no one's going to argue that he isn't playing hard out there. He's just doing too much, I would argue, where sometimes it's just make your one move and go. Take that shot rather than 5 different moves that ends up with him slipping on the floor.
I'll tell you what, him getting back cut by Brazdakis last night, though.
That was a tough look.
I was grumpy about that one, Justin.
It's shocking that you're grumpy.
I know.
But Chris Fedor did have an article in Cleveland.com basically confirming that it's not about shots going in or out. It's just play hard. And I think that's one thing that Dylan Windler has really been bringing to the table. And Mack and Corey, you guys had a really good conversation about kind of Cedi getting passed in the rotation by Dylan Windler, which in my read on it, I actually think Lamar Stevens has taken Cedi Osman's role, and Dylan Windler has moved into the Lamar Dean Wade type role, where Lamar is further up in the rotation. He's that first wing rather than Cedi, and Dylan's kind of being in that energy guy role that Dean and Lamar have played so well this season. But Corey, I'll start with you here. Do you think that Dylan Windler has done enough to kind of be the definitive option over Cedi Osman for the rest of the playoffs and regular season? This was a question asked by Sexland in Tower City. Once again,
don't you steal that valor? I thought you were about to take that for yourself.
No,
he was totally about to.
Yeah, no, I feel like I think with Dylan Windler, I feel like he's a situational playoff player in the same way that I kind of view Cedi as becoming a situational playoff player in this rotation. I think I agree with what you guys have said. And when Mack and I discussed this yesterday, we were saying that I think JB obviously is a very defensive oriented coach, and that's what he kind of knows he can work with. And he wants the identity of this team to be defense. And if there's one adjective you'd use not to describe Cedi, it's defensively minded. And if his shots aren't falling, he's not bringing any positive to the other side of the ball. Mack screams from the heavens how much he loves Point Cedi, like day and night.
Why you gotta do that to me?
I don't think JV and Mack have the same wavelength, honestly. And if Windler is going to come in and he's going to check all the other boxes, I mean, we've been saying he's been really skittish with his shooting lately. It seems like at times he really passes up open shots, not necessarily to make the smarter play, but I think he just might have like a case of the yips or something. And I was like kind of excited at the end of the game that he was getting these free throw attempts because, you know, at the end of the day, these are shots he has to take and he can't ignore it. It'll be good for him to see these shots fall. I think it's just when it comes down to Windler and Cedi, though, it's going to honestly just depend on the game type scenario. If like the Cavs are ahead, we're not going to pull Cedi into the game to have him just go around with like a chicken with his head cut off and is just going to like barrage threes. We're just going to have Windler go in and play a fundamental game that we know we're not really risking anything by having him out there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Windler that's remains so crazy is he can't make a shot, man. I think he's missed his last 13 threes. Almost all wide open, almost all from the corner, kind of his bread and butter. You know, again, like if he was even just hitting at 35%, you're feeling pretty good about him right now. Because the defensive positioning is much better. I think, you know, so much about the way we talk about defense is predicated on athleticism, but really it's just where are your feet, man. And he's got pretty decent footwork. He doesn't overextend too much on closeouts. He sits in a pretty darn good stance, and he's got quick hands. He had 2 steals last night, and I thought they were very, very timely steals.
Really important.
And you know he attacks the defensive boards. He rebounds, at the rim a lot of times. He skies for boards. And this is a team
junkyard dog chain, Carter.
He earned that junkyard dog chain. But like, ultimately the Cavs are full of guys who really mostly wait for the ball to come to them, or just or try to use their length to get the ball, whereas he's often attacking the defensive board. So you just want to see the shot go in. There is a limit to a role player's value if they can't and aren't taking and making threes, especially when they're not like elite athletes like Dylan isn't. So I don't know. I don't know if he's earned his spot the rest of the season, but he's certainly earned his next couple games. And for the Cavs' 9th and 10th men, I think that's really all you can really lock down at any given point, unless you go really crazy.
Yeah. Mac, what's your read on it?
I mean, I love what Dylan Windler's bringing to the table, but in his last 6 games, Dylan Windler has taken a grand total of 7 shots, and 4 of those came last night. That's the only gripe with him I have. It's the tentativeness to provide anything on offense. Sometimes, really oftentimes, whenever he gets the ball, he looks very skittish. He does not want to take those shots when provided those opportunities. And I feel like that is what's really holding him back, because if you guys have often said, theoretical Dylan Windler is a dangerous thing. And I still feel like there is potential there, but you cannot. Good.
Did you hear JB say after the game, he's like, he's an NBA player? That, like, I felt like that was some kind of assertion from JB where he's like, no, trust me. Like, this kid's had a weird career so far, but he's not some scrub. Like, that feels like.
I think he was talking to you because I've heard you often state on here that you sometimes question whether or not he is NBA caliber. So I think he was talking to you directly in that.
That is such a great read, Mac. I couldn't agree more.
JB, like big fan of the pod. JB never misses an episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what he listens to and is riding into practice every day. But I don't think I'm comfortable saying like anybody has really solidified a spot within the rotation outside of like the core pieces, being Darius Garland, the bigs, and even Kevin Love on nights where he's not playing hard or not playing well. Like, we've seen his minutes stay at like 12. So I'm not comfortable saying that Windler has definitively earned that spot over Cedi Osman. I think it's also important to point out that we win fewer games. We do not have 42 wins if Cedi Osman isn't on this roster. He's been a player that's made a really big difference at different points in this year. And it just kind of feels like Cedi's productiveness really comes when the situation is right, when there's a secondary ball handler or someone that can get him shots and that his role is defined. When things fall apart and all of a sudden we're in the stretch where the anchor and the core of what this Cavs team is, which is their 2 bigs in the middle, along with Darius Garland, when that is disrupted, Cedi is disrupted, and everyone else is trying to find out what's happening. So a player that goes out and gets those defensive rebounds and is a more active cutter and kind of plays a little more within himself, I can understand the appeal of that. And it'll be interesting to see when Rajon Rondo comes back. Is Cedi Osman more effective? Or does Dylan Windler all of a sudden get more open shots because Rajon Rondo is out there and solidify that spot in the rotation? So I really do think it's going to continue to be merit-based and based off of how hard these guys are playing. But at the end of the day, like it's going to come down to whoever earns those spots. So it'll be really interesting to monitor.
If that's the case, then would you be okay if you didn't see Cedi Osman for the rest of the season?
I mean, it's so situationally dependent, but like,
if Dylan Windler earns it, yeah, sure. If Dylan Windler goes out and hits 2 to 3 threes a game and plays the kind of focused, attentive defense and helps on the defensive boards the way he has and kind of is that chaos agent on offense, because he is a little bit of a tough to read player. He kind of goes off schedule with some of his back cuts and weird plays. Like if he plays like theoretical Dylan Windler, sure, but like I just don't know if that's fair to assume from him. And and again, Cedi is talented as hell. Like he really has demonstrated more explosive high-end talent than just about any non-core member of the roster this season. Yep. He scored 18 points in a quarter, guys. There is something to that, and like to some extent, like I think JB shouldn't be afraid to go to that well, especially if the chips are down on offense.
Last night was certainly a night I felt like he could have came in. I was kind of doing the same thing that Carter said he did earlier. I tweeted out, Cedi, question mark, just because I felt that, you could probably provide something, especially in the time frame at which Caris just kind of looked out of it, just completely out of it.
He looks like he is not, he doesn't look like he has much rhythm at all right now. And I don't know if do we have a Caris question, Justin? You did all the work before this one.
Yes. Yeah. We'll get to Caris.
Okay.
But,
I'll hold it. I'll hold my takes.
When it comes to the
go for it, Corey.
When it comes to the Cedi thing, I think another thing that's kind of being buried by a lot of Cavs fans is that we're getting a lot more 3-point attempts and production from other players that we weren't getting at earlier points in the season when Cedi had to take all these attempts. I mean, Okoro, as been noted, is becoming an extremely efficient shooter, and he's now making all the attempts that he was basically bricking for like the first two parts of the first half of the entire season. Lamar Stevens is becoming a more active 3-point shooter as well. And if we don't really need those attempts going up, we know Kevin's going to shoot the 3 whenever he gets the chance. Yeah, and as long as that happens, then Cedi Osman's value for the majority of the early part of the year was to be this 3-point attempt guy on this team, because everyone else was kind of skittish to do it. And now Garland's also he's becoming more aggressive with every month that passes from the 3-point line as well. So as long as these attempts are going in, Cedi really is not bringing that much of a different type of player that we don't need right now. And that's not a bad thing, because Caris is also taking them. And if Caris starts becoming a more efficient shooter, then that's also going to be a huge benefit to this team. Now Cedi's a luxury and not a necessity.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart point. And the other tricky factor is the defense really was one of Allen or Mobley at center at all times. And when Mobley's off the court, whether it be just him subbing out or via injury, you have Love and Lowry out there. And you just can't afford to have just another kind of negative defender in Cedi Osman.
Can we talk about Can we talk about
it.
that end of game defense against Orlando? I was really proud of these guys.
Well, they were scrapping it out, and Dylan Windler was an awesome part of that. And from a net rating perspective, since Jared Allen has been out, the Cavs are plus 34 when Garland's on the court, 34 points better when Garland's on the court. Plus 30 with Dylan Windler. Dylan Windler bringing that plus 30 swing, whereas Cedi Osman is down at the bottom, basically, where they're 29 points worse when he's on the court, and Brandon Goodwin's right there with him at 25.6, which is tough for Brandon Goodwin, who has been a fun story. But this is just, once again, like, you kind of expect that when the structure of a team is out of whack, it's harder for role guys to consistently perform in those spots. Bron Jetty asks, Chris Fedor reported that once Allen gets back, there is a chance that Caris LeVert may remain the starter. What lineup would you guys pick? And I guess this is our opportunity to talk about Caris LeVert, who has been in a bit of a slump lately.
That's such a loaded
or
question.
We could not.
No, I'll hop in. I think, honestly, I would be okay continuing to trot out Okoro out there over at LeVert, just because I would value the offensive spark that he would bring off the bench more. And I get there is definitely a place for LeVert to start, just because of the way the Cavs start these games. You don't want them to dig themselves into a hole just because they can't provide any type of offense outside of DG and some of the pick and roll stuff if Allen is to return. But I just, turn it purely in speaking of what the bench is able to provide. I would rather have those LeVert mints coming from there.
Mm-hmm.
No, you got it, Corey.
No, I was just going to say, if it ain't broke, I don't see the need to fix it. That our starting 5 has been solid for us the entire season. It wasn't like we were slowing down because people figured out our tall ball lineup. We're slowing down because our players are dropping like flies. And then it becomes like a patchwork effort to try to pretend like we didn't lose an all-star in Jared Allen, or lose a valuable piece of our team like Lauri Markkanen for stretches. And now Evan Mobley's going to be out. We're basically not even running tall ball. We're running Lauri out there and being like, all right, well, we're not playing Moses Brown anymore. So here you go, Lauri. You're going to play some serious minutes. And I think I agree with Mack 100%. This Cavs team needs to have some offensive punch coming off the bench. It can't just be Kevin Love, because like we've said, he has the ability to get yanked if he's not hitting his shots, because he's not bringing anything to the defensive side of the ball.
Especially if you're not going to put Cedi out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're going to say to Cedi, all right, we're going to play you like these experimental 10 minutes. And if you're feeling hot, we'll keep you in. But we're seeing from JB that he's not getting like too cute with the lineup anymore. Like he's pretty rigid in what he wants to see out there. So I would probably just keep Caris off the bench, not just because of what's happening in the recent stretch, just because this is what we traded for him. We basically traded for some version of Colin Sexton to come back to this team. And if Colin Sexton was playing off the bench when this big lineup was started, so why not just keep rolling with what's working?
Yeah, I don't know. I think like ultimately, if I'm not sure, I default to what is precedent and who's playing the best. And Caris doesn't really have either going for him right now. You know, like I don't think his on-court product has been strong at all. I think he's been pretty loose with the ball. Like just it seems very out of rhythm. The handle every pick and roll leads to him getting a bump and the ball ending up loose and available to be picked by an enterprising defender. So like that's not there right now. And then you have all the data from this season that, Tower City with Markkanen at the 3 and Okoro at the 2 and Garland at the 1 does well. I just, again, like if we were mid-season, I think I might be more inclined to be giving LeVert these minutes and let him play through it. But as we've said a few times, this is winning time. And I think you got to play your best 5. And your best 5 thus far this season has been that group. So, like, even not accounting for the balance stuff and the idea that you might want a little more on-ball juice coming off the bench to kind of help those units, especially with Cedi not in the rotation. I just don't know if Caris, I think it's easy to kind of say, hey, like, we haven't seen it yet with you, and, we'll keep our mind open for next year, but in the meantime, we're going to roll with what got us here.
Yeah, I don't really have a super strong take on this. Like, we know that Okoro is comfortable coming in off the bench as well, right? Like, we saw it at the start of the year with Sexton starting, and essentially Okoro was that first sub that would, in theory, take LeVert out, and then LeVert would be playing with the second unit, although we're already seeing some of that right now with both of them starting, where Garland comes out of the game and LeVert is functionally running the second unit. I agree with you, Carter. Like, I think it's going to come down to whoever's playing the best, and maybe some of this is also going to come down to just kind of internal conversations of, okay, is Caris most comfortable in the starting lineup, and do we need to make some concessions, and are guys willing to make those concessions? Those are the kind of conversations that we're just not going to know about, but that might be a factor. The less fun answer is we don't know how long Evan Mobley is going to be out, and we don't know when we're going to see a healthy starting 5. Thank goodness Lauri Markkanen is not on the injury report against the Dallas Mavericks. That was obviously scary. That he returned to the game against the Magic, but at the end of the day, you never know. Once the adrenaline wears off, is he going to be feeling all right and whatnot? Like, it's nice to see that he's able to play. So Caris may just need to remain in the starting lineup because we have guys out. But once we're fully healthy, it depends. Like, it really matters on who's most comfortable in whatever role, what concessions they're willing to make with one another in the name of winning. And does Caris LeVert find his footing? Like, he's not as bad as he's been right now. Like, he is a hot and cold player, but this is something else. This is him being off for a month and trying to kind of regain his form and his conditioning and all those
during
sorts
the
of
most
things.
stressful part of the season.
And in a tough environment of changing teams in the middle of the year, like, that's a tough thing to go through, but he's also a player that can run very hot. And once he gets hot, he can stay hot for weeks. So I would love to see that. But at the end of the day, like, and this is the most boring answer possible, but it really does come down to who's playing the best and who's earning these opportunities.
Well, see, the other guys are injured, Justin, so it's pretty hard to know that. So you're going to have to make a call, you coward.
You got called out.
Yeah, I did. Mack, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, you just look at his statistics since he's joined the Cavs. He's shooting well below what he has, first career average. And we know he's never really been a guy who's going to scare you from the 3-point line. I just feel like wherever they have him at, whether he's coming off the bench or starting, they got to get him, looks in motion. I feel like you cannot expect him to spot up out there. Just looking at what he does best. He's almost like a poor man's DeMar DeRozan. I mean, he loves the mid-range game. We've seen him ISO so much, and we've seen him be productive from that. But again, some of that comes from having those shot attempts too. He's averaging the least amount of shot attempts that he has since 2018-19. He's only taken 12.4 a night since he's been with the Cavs. So I feel like even in a night like last night where the shots just aren't falling, I really do just want him to continue to shoot, just because you need somebody out there to do that. He truly, in my opinion, is like the closest thing that we have to a Colin Sexton.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Corey were joking about this, and I guess somewhat serious before the trade went down. I think it's safe to say that we kind of both considered him to be an older, less efficient, injury-prone version of Colin Sexton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like he's not as inefficient as a scorer. Sexton's obviously better, and he's probably a little bit better of a passer, I would say. Like I think he's shown some playmaking chops with the Cavs, and that was kind of why I wanted him. I'm like, oh, maybe it can thread the needle between what we're missing from Sexton, what we're missing from Rubio. But so far, I mean, when you get hurt after 4 games and miss essentially a month, puts you in a tough position.
It's hard to make a solid determination on like what exactly this guy is truly going to be able to bring to the table. And it's not exactly like this guy's attached to Cavs long term. So there is some flexibility heading into the offseason if the Cavs end up seeing like everything that they need to see out of him. There's just a lot of flexibility there. So hopefully he's able to pull himself out of this funk.
100%. Oh, go ahead, Corey.
My biggest gripe with Caris LeVert is honestly not that he's just shooting these attempts. It's just more in the flow of the way he's shooting them. It's because like it just kind of feels forced a lot of the times when he's pulling up. And this Cavs offense, I feel like, is so rhythm based, because if everyone's kind of stagnant and just watching, that offense becomes like insanely less efficient. Because like you feel like at times when Garland feels like he has to carry the team on his back, that's like sometimes the only way this team can generate offense. And Caris LeVert, I feel like, was told by the staff, like, when Garland's out, we kind of need you to play the same way. And I feel like in some way, and like half joking, he kind of took it too literally, because he's trying to do the same stuff that Garland can, but he's not an as efficient shooter. And I just want it to be more in the, like, it feels like players kind of just are having to stop and stare at Caris at times. And I think his best trait has been his facilitating lately with this team. And if he can just kind of build into that more while he's struggling, he still should be on the court, but he's just going to keep putting his head down and taking these very contested shots in the mid-range, then it's not benefiting us at all. But we have to work through it, because that's what we traded for.
Yeah, he's always been a player that kind of plays on his own schedule. And, you know, I thought the Cavs could use a bit of that. And, like, you know, it's one of those things where, like, doesn't feel good right now. He's not playing that well. I think he'd probably tell you the same thing. So it's like, it's a real chicken or the egg kind of concern here that we kind of have to, that the Cavs are going to have to figure out in a very, very short window. But going from kind of the long-term decisions to the short-term, Mobley and Allen are out on Wednesday. And Bronchetti also asked if we should start Moses in the interim, as opposed to going to the kind of the Lowry Love lineup, or even the Stevens Lowry lineup.
I'm not opposed to it. Like, honestly, if like I really like the activity that Moses Brown is giving them. I think he kind of gives them a shot in the arm at times. But there are times where you can tell, like, he's out of position defensively, and
bad feet some of these in that last game. Bad feet.
Yeah, and against some of these teams, like, you look at Dallas coming up, Atlanta, like these are teams that can expose that sort of thing. If that's the case, and they're a little worried about how he's going to play in those matchups, play Ed Davis. Like, just play a veteran that maybe has a little bit of a higher floor. But I do think they need to play a center. I just don't believe Love and Lowry is tenable. And I think maybe it benefits Caris LeVert as well, having either Moses Brown or Ed Davis out there, because he is a pick and roll ball handler. And I feel like with LeVert especially, I think he would really benefit from just simplifying everything. Like, just, you know, take a few dribbles. If it's not there, give it up, reset, then try to get the ball again on the move, rather than really trying to break down the defender and play one-on-one, which it's nice to have a guy that can generate an open shot or hit a tough contested shot late in a shot clock, but we don't need that with 16 seconds left on the shot clock. So I do think having a center out there, someone that can set screens, which both Brown and Ed Davis are capable of doing, I think that would really be a benefit. And we just, you need to have someone out there. I just don't think Love and Lowry works together. Mack, what about you?
I was just going to say, I was thinking Ed Davis or Moses Brown myself, just because you can start those guys, but you don't have to give them starters minutes. And they were probably not going to see that heavy of a load. And just to put a bow on your point about Caris LeVert, his first couple of games, he looked really good. Well, I'm not going to say really good. He looked pretty good just because he had that pick and roll partner in Jared Allen. And you saw a lot of those types of actions out there with him. And now that he doesn't have that available to him, and now without Evan Mobley as well, who's kind of like the last pillar in regards to the pick and roll, I feel like, LeVert has kind of regressed back to trying to play, iso ball. So I feel like having a more traditional center out there could definitely help him. And DG in his own right. We've seen Ed Davis come in and spot start and provide good minutes, some good energy too, leadership out there. But I would not be opposed to having Moses Brown out there. There are times at which this guy just misses layups.
His touch is not elite.
Yeah, that's putting it kindly.
There's some Drummond there where he keeps getting his offensive rebound, which I can enjoy.
I did want to say to this end, like, I think the reason you start him or Davis is I think they can close lineups against decent teams and get some stops the way they did against Orlando. With a hyper switchy, hyper energy. I mean, they were flying around like a bat out of hell. Everyone was rotating. Everyone was closing out hard and on balance and disciplined, doing a lot of talking. And you know what? Like, even if you can play 5-8 minutes like that, you can't play 48 like that. So, like, there are other roads to getting stops other than playing Moses or Ed at the 5. But I just don't think. I think you have to pick your spots and make sure you have the right surrounding personnel to play that style. You can't play that style. You can't play that style with Cedi Osman or Kevin Love out there. So like I think it just makes sense to play a little bit more conventionally and only pull the scramble mode D when you really need to.
I just went galaxy brain. I'm going to throw one of my own questions in here, and Corey, I'm going to direct it to you first. Would you be open to getting really weird and going Garland, Okoro, LeVert, Stevens, and Lowry, where Lamar Stevens is essentially kind of your pick setter out there and hustle guy, and just kind of commit to playing a little bit small ball and a little faster out there?
I mean, that alone is a tantalizing idea just to think about. But, because like Lamar Stevens is this team's energy guy, and he sets the tone anytime he's out on the floor. And if he would be the one player that JB could look at and be like, I want you to do this. And he'd be like, hell yeah, let's ride. And that's pretty much what he's going to want to do. So that would be a really interesting lineup, because I feel like when we have to run Lowry at the 4 and then run like another center at the 5, Lowry constantly kind of just runs a little slower than any position he's been matched up against. And it's no slight of his own. I mean, the dude's 7 feet tall. Not every 7-footer looks like a track athlete out there, but having him be at the 5 allows him to stretch the floor, and it provides a different look to this offense that we're not going to see if we throw in like Moses Brown in for a lot of the stretch and keep swapping him and Ed Davis around. So that would be definitely offensively, that would work. I defensively is where I probably have my questions, but if we really like push comes to shove, if you want to.
The thing is, if you're going to play that style, everyone has to be bought in and everyone has to pay attention. You don't get to fall asleep off ball. You don't get to wait. You don't get to hang on your man instead of hard rotating over. So like I do think if you're going to play that lineup, like you have to talk to Caris and Darius and be like, you guys ready to run on both ends? And pay really, really good attention while you do it. Because if not, then we're not going to survive. We can't have two meh links out there.
It's probably a little tough to do when you don't even have really a practice to implement it. But, like Dallas would be an interesting team to do that against too, because they are starting Dwight Powell and Dorian Finney-Smith as their two bigs. Like that might work. Or Atlanta might be a little bit trickier with their bigs. But against Dallas, maybe that could be something they consider. But jumping to the next question, Cavs for MVP asked if Moses Brown has done enough and made enough of an impact to get a guaranteed contract in your eyes. And for me, like, I really don't have a strong take on this. Like, I like Moses Brown. I think he'd be fun to kind of take a flyer on and keep around. But I really don't have a strong take on this one. Like I just
through the end of the year, sure.
Are we talking two-way? I mean, I guess it would depend upon the contract.
You'd have to convert Brandon up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think like here's the thing: if your bigs are going to be beat up, you might as well, and just give yourself an extra body out there. But like, I don't think he's been so good
especially
that
if it's just for the end of the year, right? Like,
yeah, why not? It's prorated for like $50.
Yeah, call up Andy. Call up Andy. See what he's doing.
What's
Not
Dante
again.
Jones
I can't.
Up to? Dante Jones is willing to come in and give some hard minutes and 6 hard fouls.
I heard Alonzo G is looking for work.
There you go. Moving on, Chris asks, do you think Lauri Markkanen at the 3 is proven to be sustainable, and if that's something we would like to see moving forward? Or should the team prioritize getting a more traditional player at the small forward position?
I mean, when this lineup was started, it was because out of solely the need of shooting that we had Lauri in there. It wasn't that when we traded for him, that JB immediately galaxy brained the idea of being like, all right, this is wild, guys. Stay with me. Lauri at the 3. And they were like, yes, what a great idea.
And it worked. It was beautiful.
Lauri only really works in this context because of the defensive solidity that Allen and Mobley provide. And his shooting is what we need when he's out there. We're not expecting him to play like a true 3. So if we have the luxury of acquiring a 3 in some facet, it doesn't mean that Lauri is now just useless. It means that he's going to be just as valuable, but he can play a more natural position for himself. So if that opportunity came up, I would probably, I would like to take it, because at some point, like, they're going to figure out how to really put the stop to this tall ball lineup. But if we can just figure out a way to acquire someone that, or develop a player even to step into that role to make it a more conventional offense and allow it to, I mean,
Mack is drinking that Kool-Aid right now.
Oh, Mack is drunk off the Kool-Aid.
Mack has given up on Point Jetty already. They're like, this is heartbreaking to witness in real time.
Mack's gonna tweet after this, just be like, man, you guys think about Dylan Windler like every hour of the day, or is it just me?
That's exactly what it's gonna be like. I'm gonna lean full on into it. I
like your suggestion on today's pod of him getting the Dennis Rodman hair with the way he's been rebounding. I think that would really kick his game to the next level.
Oh yeah, it's all a mentality thing. That's what we've been waiting to see from him. But in regards to that lineup, just as Corey alluded to, I mean, this is very much personnel based. It works so well just because each guy is providing something in their own right, and they fit well together. But if you're thinking about possibly upgrading to a more traditional 3, you got to look at what it would probably cost the Cavs too. It's not going to come cheap to upgrade that position, especially considering the core members that we have right now. They have so many decisions to make, in regards to contracts moving forward. I'm not sure it would be entirely worth it. So I'd be okay, trotting it out next season, especially if Sexton returns.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, man. Like, the reality is, what are the Cavs really missing from Lauri? It's athleticism on D, and it's playmaking on offense. Well, big athletic playmaking wings are pretty freaking expensive and pretty hard to find.
Yeah,
so
teams aren't dying to give them away.
Are you going to get Brandon Ingram? I mean, like, guys like that, or Jaylen Brown, they're going to cost. It's not
or not even be gettable at all. Even if you wanted to buy them.
So methinks Boston's not looking to give up any of that core.
Yeah, I think that one's pretty done. Ultimately, I think he's played well enough that the Cavs should not be looking to upgrade at any cost. But he has not played so well that the Cavs shouldn't consider finding, if an upgrade falls across their desk or they can find a creative way towards a more conventional 3, sure. But I'm not in any hurry just to say, well, we have to start Caris and Isaac because, Lauri doesn't look like a 3. I just don't think we need
like every other team.
Yeah,
if we do anything that's different than another team, it makes me uncomfortable and insecure. We got to be like everyone else, so people don't point out that we're different.
So I'm just not in any hurry, I guess.
Here's the nice thing with Lauri Markkanen. I think we've seen enough that we know that it works with Mobley and Allen, and that gives you a little bit of positional versatility in the front court. That, okay, Kevin Love's got 1 year left on his contract. We don't know if he's going to be with the team moving forward, right? Like that's just kind of the reality of the business of the NBA. You know that Lowry can probably play that role pretty easily, and you can also play him at the small forward position. So if an opportunity came around to get a wing, hey, Lowry can play backup 4 and also give us some minutes at the 3. And this might allow us to get more creative with the talent that we can acquire, because like at the end of the day, like it's really tricky to add high level talent in the NBA, and it might not be an exact fit with your roster. But when you have enough versatile guys, or a combination of 2 big men in Allen and Mobley that allow you to get a little weird and to play different combinations of players, it allows you more freedom to just go out and acquire the best talent available. So I'm comfortable if Lowry is our starting small forward next year. But I do think the fact that he has performed so well both in that spot, and he can obviously play at his more natural position of power forward, that gives you some flexibility, which I think is a really helpful thing to have from a team building standpoint.
I also hate to play the idea of Debbie Downer here, but in the way that, like, we can't also sit here and say that Kevin Love might play his way out of being affordable for this Cavs team if we're just paying all these young guys in the following years. And Lauri could eventually, like, if we end up getting a 3, grow into that Kevin Love role off the bench for this team in the 2 years from now, because we know we have him locked down. And if we value him, he can stay. So, and if we ended up having to trade for a 3, I can't see a package in which Lauri wouldn't be the one who would probably have to leave, just from the way the numbers are going to work, because he's probably going to be one of the more movable contracts that we have.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a hurtful point, but it's a good one.
I don't want to personally move off Lauri, like I said, because even the price for like a mid-level 3 is more expensive than the price for like a mid to high level 4 or any other position, because it's so hard to find. Teams are so hungry to find that type of player. It's like the building block of every playoff team. So it's going to be too expensive.
This is why I hate
want to see the guy take advantage of his post opportunities when he gets them. That's all I want to see out of him.
We'll probably be waiting for a while on that one.
He has been better attacking.
I'm more than happy with him as a cutter and an attacker.
He's an opportunist.
But the post up game, I don't know if that's going to ever be his bread and butter. But as long as he is doing what he's doing right now on the offensive end, which is taking advantage of openings, attacking and finishing through contact, which has never been his what he's been known for. I think is finishing through contact and just being like, sometimes a lot of those buckets, those and ones he's been in, are like, I'm tall and moving towards the basket buckets. And just like
randomly dunks like Tom Chambers.
Lowry dunks are awesome. Lowry dunks are so awesome.
So I'm more than happy with that. I don't need him to develop as a post player at this point. I just want him to make sure he's never invisible out there. And I think he's been doing a much better job of that as of late.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You better not be invisible being 7 foot.
All right, you telling me?
That's a good point. Zev asks, if you could only roster 2 of the following next year, who would you pick out of Sexton, LeVert, and Rubio? And for me, this is a pretty easy answer. As much as I love Ricky, it's Sexton and LeVert. Like, Ricky's probably not going to be ready for the start of next season. It's going to take him some time. I mean, you look at even just the meniscus injury that Sexton suffered, that Garland suffered. Like, that's the type of injury that even a young player, you're probably not yourself the first year back anyways. And like the Cavs, like, you're might have to look for more reliable options, because the reality is, in today's NBA, guys miss time. Nobody plays 82 games anymore. The game's faster. Guys are stronger. There's so many collisions and whatnot, and teams are a little smarter with how they manage those injuries. So I think you're better off bringing those 2 back. I kind of like the idea of those 2 playing together. I think you saw improved playmaking in the last year or the last month that Sexton played a season ago, and just rolling those guys out and maybe bringing in a different backup point guard that's more ready. So if I had to pick 2 of those 3, I would cut Ricky from that list, who obviously isn't with the team anymore.
I'm with you. I mean, you have to side with the guys who have more upside in the future. I just feel like that's good basketball. Kobe Alvin is probably, we can trust him to make the right decision in that regard. That's a tough question though. For everything that you said, what's the fact that, I mean, let's look at the obvious here. We just don't know what Ricky Rubio is going to be like. We don't know how much money he's going to be requesting. We don't know a lot of different things. There's just too many factors. we know that a guy like Colin Sexton is going to be motivated to come back and play some of the best basketball that we've seen from him.
And he's going to be a monster. I'm convinced of it.
I am too. I mean, this guy is going to be a scary sight to see him in once he gets back to full strength.
Would you say scary hours?
Yes, very much so. I would not want to see that guy in transition.
Corey, what about you?
I agree with you, Justin and Mac. But I think the thing that Ricky really showed us in his stretch with the Cavs is like at the end of the day, the thing that we really saw is like how this team can really flourish with another facilitator on the floor. So now that we know what Ricky brought to the table, it's not even that necessarily Ricky needs to come back. It's like, all right, now we know what this team needs to look like. So it's more free flowing because we've still not seen this team recover from losing that facilitator. I mean, Rondo comes in, he does a fine enough job covering the facilitator side, but Ricky at least was like super aggressive with shooting the ball as well. And it wasn't necessarily the most efficient, but he felt like he hit the most important shots of the game when he needed to. And Rondo gets left open. Like the dude looks like the teams don't think that dude will ever shoot in his life. And he's willing to shoot it every day he gets the ball. So I think if anything, it gave us a really good offseason plan being like, all right, we know our backup guard for this team. I mean, Sexton's going to probably step into that Ricky role somewhat because we were even seeing this year and then parts of last year that they wanted Sexton to be more of that secondary ball handler for this team. And it looks like LeVert wants to do the same thing. But if we're not going to get that from either of them, we want them to be more scoring minded, then we at least know what we're trying to get from Ricky's absence. We don't necessarily need Ricky. We just need a Ricky type.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Raul Neto. I'm sure Carter is once again going to be pining.
Still my heart.
I was hoping that they would sign prior to acquiring Ricky.
It's an established chase down meme. I love Raul Neto. That dude's a player.
Tomas Satoransky, anyone? I mean, come on.
Man, that sounded very appealing before he just went absolutely off a cliff this season. Joshua asks, what are your best case scenarios if we do end up in the play-in? Which, let's be honest, with Evan Mobley out, this is going to be a pretty tough task. As I said, 5 games in 7 days this week. That's not ideal, and it's not a good time to be dealing with an ankle injury with Mobley. So we don't have a timeline there. But who would you like to see first round in the play-in? And the second part to this question is, if we made it out of the play-in, who would you want to see at the top of the bracket?
I don't think this one's too complicated. I think we'd love to see the Charlotte Hornets leapfrog the Brooklyn Nets. And
who's your part 2 answer, Carter?
And then I'm hoping that if we lose to the Hornets, that the Hawks beat the Nets.
No, you misinterpreted. If we beat the Hornets, if we beat whoever you face first, because if you're picking your opponent, you're feeling pretty confident about it. Who do you want to see at the top of the bracket? Like Miami, Philadelphia, and all those teams.
I think I'm actually at the point where I don't care. It's so tight at the top of the East that I know you'd
just
love
survive.
I know you'd love to play Philly, Justin, and see if we can knock them off. But I think the Cavs at the current state they are, like, it is let's just get there and see, and whoever they end up playing, let's make the best of it. I think we've talked about it. All the 3 teams at the top, Miami, Philly, and Milwaukee, the Cavs pose some specific issues for them just in terms of their half court prowess on defense. When they're healthy and right, but I'm not sure we're gonna get to see that as much as we might like. And with the team kind of just trying to find their mojo and trying to get healthy, I just want to get there. I mean, if you ask me who I really want to play, I guess it would be Miami. Actually,
Miami's slumping pretty hard.
Just because they're slumping hard, and I don't think they're as talented as the other top 3 teams in the East. But I don't know. It's hard to be too picky right now. I just want to get there.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I feel. I just want to get there. I want to experience not just playing basketball, but, play off basketball. I want this team to be able to get there and cap off a season of so many surprises.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be
Are you picking different? Charlotte or
Charlotte? It would definitely be Charlotte. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I don't trust them.
I agree with everything that's been said because, I want to be built different. I want to say that I kind of want to face Boston right now. I know it's I think it's very unlikely that Boston's going to be at the 1 seed anymore now that they just lost Lob Rob, Big Bob out there. But that team defensively, I can't think of one way they're going to really be able to handle our bigs if we're at full strength. But this is
a really good point.
Toronto. Corey is afraid of Toronto. You don't want to see him.
Toronto's never climbing to the top. Let's be honest. It would take Nick Nurse to win Coach of the Year for the last home stretch in order for that to happen. And if JB somehow finds a way to get us back into the playoffs and out of the play-in game, give that man the Coach of the Year as well. This is going to take some wizardry to get us back into being in competitive shape. But I think Boston is like, now they're ripe for the taking. I was kind of debating between them or Miami because they're imploding in different ways. Miami is like all mentally imploding, but Boston, their defense was so dependent on the Marcus Smart and Rob Williams combination. Like those two could have easily been up for Defensive Player of the Year from the way that they've turned around Boston's defense. And without him, like, are we scared of Daniel Tice at all for Jared Allen or Evan Mobley? I've watched Daniel Tice for many years because I've succumbed to all my Boston fans that are my friends. Daniel Tice can't defend anyone. That dude is as passive as it comes, and he just gets, the refs hate that dude. Like he gets called for calls all the time.
Corey, this is actually kind of revealing because it's showing us the real reason we brought you on this podcast, and that's why you get better friends, ones that aren't fans of the Boston Celtics. I think you got to rectify that in your life. I agree. I'd like to see the Charlotte Hornets first round. I am not picking the Celtics. I don't want to see Al Horford get his revenge now that Tristan Thompson is no longer on the Cavs. That would be a little scary. Miami's probably my pick, although I did just see a tweet earlier today that called James Harden Brick Ross, and I've just
that's so disrespectful. That is so disrespectful.
The potential for slander is just so high there, and like to me, just thinking about if we can get fully healthy,
I gotta protect you from you, man. We can't play the Sixers. You're gonna be too upset. You're not gonna be able to handle it well. If we lose every single loss, you are going to be raging so hard and just doling out blocks onto it. It's not good for you. I don't want it.
You know me better than I know myself, but I also, like, sometimes I just get that David and Goliath type mentality where I just want to like pick a fight with the biggest guy out there, and I want Brooklyn in the first round, then or in the play-in, and then I want Philadelphia after that. Like, it would be so much fun if after this kind of lull and trying to survive all these injuries,
if we beat Brooklyn in the play-in, we're losing our minds.
That would make it all worth it if Jared Allen and Evan Mobley came back and in a one-game setting you beat Brooklyn. That would be
with Kyrie.
Oh, and especially if it was in Cleveland. Just chef's kiss. That would be absolutely
perfect.
It had
better be in Cleveland. We're up 3 games and they're down 7 to Detroit right now.
That's a very, very good point. Looking at the schedule too, like I think we should keep an eye on Chicago because they're playing Washington tonight, but after that they are playing teams that are better than them for the rest of the season. And obviously the Cavs are in a tough spot too because a lot of our winnable games are this week, and we don't know if we're going to have any of our big men. So play-in might be our destiny, but hey, this is going to be good experience. As I said before, this is still a developmental year. So this type of a test and this type of adversity, it's good for the development, whether or not they make it out of it. So I'm excited. We'll see how this plays out. Thank you both for coming on the podcast so much. To everyone listening or watching on YouTube, you can find the It's Cavalier podcast on YouTube, as well as wherever you were listening to this podcast. Make sure you subscribe to both of those platforms. If you're watching live on YouTube, like, subscribe, click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, you can send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.